This video tutorial is going to be an overview of the usage of the calendar. The project calendar you see here is where you can schedule and manage your information. And when I say schedule, I'm going to show you some aspects of how it works. For example, if you're looking at the calendar, and I'll start at the top, we do have the app map to navigate to anywhere in the application you want to go in one click. When you leave the application and you're on the server, you use the logout, and on the iPad, if you're using FMGO, you have to use the logout to exit from the application as far as the full application. The video help button over here will take you to the video help screens if you need to go there. And of course, you can navigate using the app map as well. The application going from over here starts with the current date that you have selected from the small calendar down here, or if you're in the week, month, or year calendars or the list calendar, you can navigate to a certain date by using that. Let's take a look at just the week, for example. If you want to go to a location where you have a different date or whatever, you just click on the calendar here. Or if you want to actually add something new to that calendar date, you can click it here or in the day or the month calendars in order to get to where you want to go. Let's take a look at the month. The month is a little bit harder to see, but at least in this area you can see here's the planning for a Monday for P20000.01, which is usually the planning, and you can see how it pops up here. It says proposal planning. It's supposed to be for Brett Jones, and it's a medium priority, and it's assigned by admin, and proposal management is what we're working on there. The same thing occurs if you hold it in here and you look at the information. You'll see that we got budget planning. It was put in there by admin, and if you come over and look, this is how you actually edit the view and go ahead and look in there, or you can actually click on the actual thing here and it'll bring it up. Now I'm going to slide this down a little bit so we can have the correct access. What we're going to be looking at is the actual process of adding information into the calendar. Like I said, you can add a new one from here and put a new row in here for whatever it is. You can also click on the title, and the title will take you in to that particular thing. And when you're in a different calendar, like here, they have different calendars that are available to us. You can add a calendar, and I'm going to cover that in a few minutes, but you can add a new calendar. Each one of these calendars, to make it interesting, is the administrator is the developer. You have a default user in this case, but the default user is where you can go over to schedule users and add an actual name in there. So if you wanted to put employee calendars up here where they have their appointments and scheduled items or events or tasks that they're doing, you could actually add a person and just show his stuff for him or her on the employee calendar for the username. And for example, we have some default ones. There's engineering schedules, manager admin, marketing schedule, production schedule, the project manager schedule itself where he schedules all of his stuff, proposal schedules, and specifications. Now you can add additional ones by coming over to the user schedule over here, and I'm going to have to show you how this works. You come in here and you click on a plus sign. Now this is only for admin managers to be able to change these, so the average employee is not going to be able to. You can see where it says users. These are user calendars, and this is an administrative manager calendar. So for the person that is managing the admin portion of the calendar as a manager, you can go in here and you can add, or for example, I'll just say click in his, and you can see this little dialog pops up, and here he is, manager, admin. His login is manager, and if you change the password, you have to be an admin to change the password. But the manager could hand out the passwords and usernames to individual users and actually even put their image in here if you wanted to paste or insert it in so you could see a picture of the user. And if you had a signature where you were going to use signatures, which is probably something you're not going to do in this application, but you could add a signature if you wanted to. Down here, the role of this particular person is an administrator. And if you add an email in here, which is something we don't recommend, there is the ability in the calendar, if any time a schedule is changed, it sends an email to the user of that account by whoever the login is. In this case, the manager admin would be logged in. It's not a good idea because what happens, it's so busy on the calendar with people making changes. what it's going to do is going to drive you crazy. Every time you turn around, you're going to get an email. It was a great idea by the developers, but in practicality, it really doesn't work well. If you're in this area, you can change the password if you're an admin on anybody or anything that's in this calendar by clicking on password and typing in a new password at the manager level, who is an administrator. And I can see right there, administrator is logged in there. If you close, it's just going to close. If you add a new line in the calendar as far as the users, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go and edit and put in the password and username. And let's go into a user to see. I'm going to click on the arrow over here. And if, say, for example, I change this information here, before I leave, it's going to prompt me to change the password and put a new password in. The role of this person, or this screen for this person who is using it, is a user. If they're an administrator, then they would have the rights to go ahead and modify other things like passwords and stuff like that. I suggest you tell your regular users, don't use that thing. Now, when they log in, what's going to happen when they log in, you can actually set up rights. And what that means is they can either use the ability within the screen that they're in, but you can actually lock them down. So say, for example, on the engineering calendar, I didn't want admin people in there. So if I created a new user type of a role, but it says limited user, and you don't want admin in there, I could take out the admin people. This is custom stuff that is done for the person that is managing this in your business. And I can confer with you on that and tell you how to do that kind of stuff. Okay, let's go back to the actual calendar. Some of the things that are going on in the calendar, if you want to show a completed task, what you would do is go ahead and click the completed, and what it's going to do is draw a line through it. What happens right here, right now, because it's in red, it has not been completed. And that means that this task is passed, and it should be in the expired list. And I'm not sure exactly why our expired list is not showing it right now, but it isn't. So anything in red is something that has gone past the time where we're supposed to be completed. And if I jumped over to something else, like I come down here to the 27th and I click in here, you'll see here's another planning schedule going. And this is for the project number 2, and it's a 1.0 proposal planning, and Brett Jones is the guy that's doing it. I suggest that you use titles like this to make it easier to understand in the calendar what's going on. You can have a little longer. It will wrap around and add more data, but it's best to make it short and sweet. Okay, if I wanted to see the actual setup, for example, if I add a new one, it's going to pop right into the new calendar, and I'd put in information. If I have something that's already in here, it's going to go to the edit calendar, and as you can see at the top, it's going to say edit appointment calendar. Okay, so what happens, and I'm going to explain, when you open a new calendar and you're going to put in an event, you put in the project and then the extension for the schedule number. You put in whatever the scheduled number is supposed to be for, and then the particular employer that you're going to put, employee that you're going to use. If this was a vendor, you could put another thing in there. If there was vendors, and this is the guy that's responsible for something, you could put the vendor name in there as well. There's plenty of room. In the type, it's planning or one of these defaults. Now, each one of these has an icon, and they show up in the calendar. So, for example, if I hit budgeting, that it's going to be budgeting in here now. I could set the priority to routine or low, and then medium, and then high priority. I would put the date for the start date of the event and then the end date of the event. You can have a date span if you have to. If you have a date span, you don't have to put in a time. You could put in a start time on the first day and just leave the closing time closed or not there, because you're going to be putting in a date range. And the way you do a date range is just pop it up. Instead of the 27th, maybe I want to take it to the 3rd. And now you can see that it's going to be all the way out to the 3rd. And it's telling you over here that these probably don't need to be in there now. I'm going to put it back to the 20th. Well, no, actually, let's leave it on there and see a span, just so we can see it when we go back out to the calendar. If you have special notes you want to add, you can put in a note up here, type in the note, and then click over and put something else in there that says something about this particular event. Now, over here, you see all the different kind of calendars that are currently set in the application. When you click on in here, you can see the admin started it, and that's the admin that created the actual event. And what happens, I have it clicked for me, it automatically clicks, and then I can pick like a default user. In this case, if it's something planning, It's going to be something like marketing schedule. I want it to be on that calendar. I want it to be on the project manager's calendar, and I want it to have it on the proposal schedule. And you can add additional things here, and I'm going to show you how to do that, like I said, in a little bit here. The next thing we want to look at is, this actually is for something we're not using anymore for estimation, and it would be a number. And in this case, if you wanted to, you could put a number in there, like if this was a 2-hour event or whatever, you could put the 2 in there if you wanted to. Now here's the big thing in this application as far as the calendar is concerned. You come in here, and I'm sure you were asking the question, well, how do I know what's going on and where I have to go? So if I went to, for example, project marketing, it's going to show you the different calendars that are in the application as far as projects. So this is marketing's listing of all the different projects. In this case, it's project marketing ID 1, 2, and for up here it's going to be example. That's the name of it. Design engineering test. That's another name for something. And this is the proposal date when it was actually started. This is the company we're doing it for. This is the company primary contact. This is information at the top level for a project. So if you see the information, you want to know what the proposal is, what the ID number is, you can jump in there. Project manager for this, you can see over here, here's all the project managers. You can scroll through here, and you can see this is for project ID 2, this is 1, and you can say when you were back in the different projects, you could see on the back end of the application that all the ID 1s would be shown. But in this project management, what happens, it's going to cycle, and it's going to show you from 1 through the different projects based on first the project ID and second by the schedule number. So it's going to go run through these, and you're going to be able to see them. If you want to go all the way to the last one, you can click go to last. If you want to go to the first one, you go first. So let's see, what is the last one? Well, there it is. So it's very quick to get to the bottom, or go all the way down if you're going to the most current projects that are in here. And you can see by looking in here, you can actually go in and edit the notes in this field and add additional information. These should be left alone because they're the standard things in here. Or if you're updating the project estimate date, you could put that in there and you can edit it. And if you go to the back end of the application where this originated, it would update that information by editing it in here. The next thing is the manpower schedule. And you recognize what this is. By the way, all of these that you see in the screen are edit only. You cannot create new records from this screen, but you can go in and edit or change something if you had to. You can see that it's pretty much got everything that you see. If I wanted to know what PO2 was, well, that's a design engineering test bench. If I wanted to know what 1 was or other ones, they're going to all schedule down here, and you can scroll up and down to see what they are. And this is the same information we were doing when we were in the budget portal. And this is the budget information. So if you needed to have this information, you have it here, and you can edit it if you need to, and you can change this edit data in here. So you have a lot of control over it. But every one of these that are in here, you cannot create them from here. So this is just editing the current information. So for example, if I wanted to go in and change the status here, I could do that. And on the back end of the application, on the manpower budget, it would also change it back in that area. So for example, if you had to update hours from here, maybe it ran over or whatever, you could actually do that, and it would change the cost. Now, obviously the only person that should be doing that is the project manager. Employees, once they're set up and they're supposed to be doing their particular thing, in the application of doing the project, they would not be changing this schedule. These are things that are done by the admin people or the project manager. Next one is the manpower portal. And this is the one that's kind of really important in here. If you're setting up a scheduled event on the actual calendar, you have everything you need to know from here. For example, if it were John Smith, the engineer, he was in P1000, and it was scheduled event number 1, and it was for planning element. In this case, it's the initial marketing meeting. And of course, if it was actually completed in here, and a lot of these example stuff, I didn't finish them off. But here's one right here. You can see the P020, same thing. This is the date spans, and this is the hours that he was supposed to spend in there. He did an estimated 2 hours, and the actual was 2. So this could show you where, if you wanted to update the actual calendar, because this information is now completed. Normally what had happened on February 14th, in fact, Valentine's Day, if he completed this on the correct time And we had up here the element end date was supposed to be the February 7th. That's kind of backwards. It should have been sometime after the element start date. So it should have been probably the 15th. So I would have probably put the 15th in there. Normally when I'm doing these examples, I'm testing them and throwing data in there, and I'm not all that concerned about if it's correct or not. So you can see if I saw an error and I wanted to update it, I could. And as you're seeing in the actual scheduling Manpower portal for task manning, that's what this is. The vendor select would be if you had a vendor and the deliverable that you're working on, the date of the deliverable, the received date of the deliverable, and the quality check if it's been done or not yet. You're clicking that down, you can see pending or completed. You can edit this and add some other things to the line if you needed to. Okay, so to get out of here, and this is a good example of navigating around the calendar. If you're in this particular record, it was cropped so that you can click anywhere out of the portal area to close it. So there you go, you can close it. And that's true of all the different ones. So now that I'm going to project scheduling, I have the similar thing that we had before, only I have a little bit more information in here. The project schedule number, the date start, the proposal number, the project estimate completed date, the end date, this. But now I have a place where I can put in the requirement. For example, if I needed to understand what the requirement was or the description of the thing, I could read it here if I needed to and adjust it in the calendar if I needed to add some notes into the calendar itself. Okay, project planning. You haven't really got into this yet, but this is one of the next things we're going to be covering on the next video. But it explains the project planning, and this is the project manager putting in his notes and scheduling information as far as the plan is concerned. Anything that affects the actual plan could be noted here by the project manager. So if there was something that either delayed, work stoppage, or something like a vendor issue or whatever like that would be a part of this. And this is also in the planning schedule on the back end of the application. Then the planning portal itself is the detail of the start, stop, and all the information about the plan schedule. And this is probably one of the most important things, is the process notes. The process notes basically are explaining what is going in to the process from the project manager, saying what he expects the outcome of whatever this event is or element. And so at the end of this element, you should have completed any of these things that are in here in the process. So it's not actually the individual requirement, but it's the outcome of those requirements that you're working on. For example, in this case, if it were initial marketing meeting, you would put anything in that had an exception. So for example, if you were supposed to process in the meeting what is supposed to be done as far as the schedule and process, you'd put that in here. Then if there were issues, for example, conflicts with a vendor or conflicts with a client or whatever, or the client came in and made some changes or whatever, that's the information that is vital in this area. And this is supposed to be done by the project manager. In this case, it's Ben Cole for this project. So it's critical to understand what's going on. Of course, you can always scroll down in each one of these and see some of the other process notes that are in here. And in this case, I'm explaining some things about the process notes you need to be available to understand what's going on. Now, I suggest if you're doing things like notes and you're putting in a note, you could also put a date that relates to when this was entered. That's very important for people that are reading through it to understand the event of when this changed or what occurred or what happened if a client intervenes and says something else. And of course down here, if you have a vendor related thing and you have the vendor number or later the vendor ID in here, as we put more vendors in, you'll see more of them that will be in the drop down list. In this case, the Trans Global, their telephone number, where they're located, and their zip code if you needed it. Then the contact would be typed in, the phone number, and then the calendar start date for the vendor, whatever his commitment is to this particular element, if it were here. And in this case, this is strictly the home office that's doing this because it's related to budgeting research. But if it were vendors involved, this would be put in here. And then anything that affected the schedule would be over here as far as the project manager's notes. Okay, so we've pretty well done everything in this area. And the last thing is the planning portal. We're at and explaining the notes. To get out of this area, just like I said before, click anywhere off of here, or if you have a button edge showing, for example, if I put this up, I could also click it one more time to lower it again so that it's not in my way. So now when you complete a task, you can complete it from within this screen and show that it had been completed, or you can close this and then just go ahead and click here on the closed or completed, and it would draw a line through it. Now, here's one of the things I need to tell you. There is the ability to actually remove one of these rows if you had to. The issue in that is when you do it, if you change the schedule where this event is changing, go in and edit the date and the times in the actual edit screen that we had popped up a few seconds ago. That way this will be moved from this calendar to whatever date you moved it to. So for example, if it were on the 4th and I moved it to the 27th, when I put it back in, I would change the date on the 4th to the 27th, and it would show up over here. So it's dependent upon what you actually add and edit in here. If I change these dates in the date span, then that of course would change them in there. Speaking of that, while we're here, we'll go back in and look at the date span. So let's go to the record for this one, and we're going to go into the week. And what you'll see is the date span is crossed all the way across here, showing you that information. Now, if you bring it up here and hold it in place, you can see what is affecting, who's on it. In this case, it's a proposal planning by Brett Jones, and all these are the same. So if I come over here, if I had another one below it, I could highlight that one and see what that information is for. And also have the daily appointments based on the week, so I can come down here also and then jump in and open that up to edit it if I had to. The month is a little different. If you're in the month schedule, you can see the span across here. And if there were more than one, or say there were 10 or 12 of them in here, you can go back to that date calendar by clicking on the date number. And if you wanted to add more stuff in there for a new date, you would click on the plus sign, and it would take you into the edit new record. And that would go ahead and add that new record so that it would be shown in here on that date. Now, there's also a list, which is going to pop up here, and I'm going to have to pull it back down. On the list, basically what you're looking at is everything that has been scheduled, who scheduled it, what date it started, the date that it's due, and then the element information. And if you, of course, click on it, it's going to take you, in this case, if you go here and click on it, it's going to take you into the pop-up record so you can edit it if you need to. So navigating around the calendar is a very complete way to manage information. Now, I know the first question that'll probably come in if somebody had a question is, how do I modify the date? Like we explained, you can just modify the date. But let's say, for example, this is what's really nice about this calendar. If this particular person, Brett Jones, was supposed to have this activity done by the 3rd, which is a date span from the 27th to the 3rd of March, and something changes, you can go ahead and make the changes and then make the notes in the planning element so that you would know what happened and why it was changed. Now, I prefer a calendar and all the information that goes along with the calendar for the obvious reason. If you have a Gantt chart, Gantt charts are nice and interesting where they schedule and drop down and drop down and drop down and show you the event for this that is telling you in these areas it's moving this way. Well, in this particular case, you can show a 1 day, multiple days for a date span. You can see the times. You can see what it is for. You can see the actual thing that's going on in that activity. And you can see who started the process, the priority for it. And then if you need to change it, you can just pop right in and make the changes that you need to. Very simple interface. This is by that law, the 157 law that I like about it. Make it simple as possible. Do it in 1, 5, or 7 and see if you find it simple to do and comfortable to do, then it is the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it should be organized and managed. Now, this may take some people and say, well, you know, I'd love to have a Gantt chart and stuff like that. Well, that's not going to stop you from having a Gantt chart. It will not be in the application because most applications, the price of this particular item is $636, just the calendar. If you wanted to add a Gantt chart and you talk to us, we would see if there's a Gantt chart available and add it to the application. But you've got to be aware there's going to be a cost for that. So, and there actually is a Gantt chart available for this application if we wanted to add it. But just to give you an idea, probably the least expensive one to add individual costs one time is around $1,400. That's why it's not in this application. It would drive the cost of this application where it's unaffordable for me to offer it. But if you want to have it and you're a bigger company and you want to spend the dollars, and if it's a one-off situation, you're going to end up by having to pay the one-off cost. For example, this application sells for $299. If the application had a Gantt chart in it also, obviously I'd have to raise the cost if I'm going to amortize it over many sales to something like $400 or $500 in order to make it cost effective. So keep in mind that you have a budget and you don't want to have to spend all the money on one thing. And if a Gantt chart, really helps you, then we can add it for you, but it might be expensive. Okay, up in this corner there's a little question mark. In a lot of cases, if you click on that question mark, what it's going to do, it's going to bring up a website, and on that website, I'm going to pull it over here real quick so you can see it. And it's kind of hard to see, but basically what it does, it goes through the calendar and how it actually works and how you edit it and all the information in it. The problem with that is, though, is that having to bring it up, some of the things I've modified do not exist in this calendar. I've added a lot of stuff to this calendar. For example, clicking in and looking at it, all of these items in here were edited and designed into this calendar by me. If you needed something else, and probably what I will do in this calendar that I haven't done yet because this is in the pre-release version, I will have a text box in here for notes at this level so that you can actually be able to put additional notes in here if you wanted to. I'd already planned to do it, I just haven't completed that yet. So those are the kind of things you do. And I keep on saying things about add-ons. There are a lot of things we can do to this application, but it's a cost driver. Basically, if I had to go put things in here for everybody, it would be less cost as far as not the cost of the application being current. It wouldn't be less than that, but it would always be more. So I'd have to raise the price for everybody in order to make it cost effective for the developer to do that. But if you want things added, you can always discuss that with us and we can add them because this is a custom application. Okay, if you have any questions, as always, and you need help understanding something in this application, you can always contact us. Now, I did say that I did the user thing in here. I'm going to tell you things that I don't want you touching, and this is one. This is called the multilingual thing, and I can come in here and I can change things, but it affects a lot of programming, and it makes it really impossible for a novice to do things in this screen. One of the other things you can do is on the profile. You can change the profile from here if I'm an admin or whatever. Now, you're not going to be able to change it because you don't have the password to do it for a user to change the administrator. But if you're in one of the other things in here and you want to change something, you can do that. Preferences, I'll just show it what it looks like, but there's really nothing you need to change in here. I show you the pop-ups that show up on the screen, and I've edited those myself. You can change the way the calendar looks in here. And in this case, it says email me about updates and appointments assigned to me, or update them to appointments assigned to me. In this particular case, this should be like it is, just like you see it, and you shouldn't be messing with it. If it doesn't have an email assigned, it's not going to send it anywhere. It's just going to default to nothing. If you did put an email in and you wanted to be updated every time there was an appointment change or a new one, you could check these boxes and allow it to send you email based on the administrator who put in the information for the email address. But like I said, you probably won't like it. It's not going to be what you want to see. There's some other options, like always use web dialogues, show what I want to improve or how I want to improve this. Obviously, these are things you don't have to worry about doing. Okay, I'm going to close this. Relogin. What relogin is, let's just go back over here to the calendar itself. Relogin is if you're in one person's calendar or one of these calendars, and say, for example, we added all the employees that are people that are going to be doing work, and it was a list of employees down through here. That would show in that square box that there would be, like in here I have default user. The default user can be changed to a named person, and you would do that in the user group over here. You would just add them in here like we showed you before. When you add those people in there and you make the modifications, it should be done by the admin person, not just anybody, because it'll screw up the entire application. If you say, for example, you change somebody's login, and each person that was named like a default user would have their username and their own password. Now, what would happen when they come in, if you did not click in the check boxes here for that person to see that particular information for that thing that you added up here, then it would not go to them. It would not be on their calendar. So for example, if I'm the administrator and I add something, I put it to the default user, I could come back over to the default users calendar, drop down and look at it, and I can actually see that information. So if we added employees and they came across the screen over here and you had a number of employees, you could say, I want this employee, Brett Jones or whoever, to have this particular added thing, and it'll add it to his calendar. But then these are the top level ones like production schedule, marketing manager, and all this stuff. These are in here as key calendars, meaning that if I go back out, and for example, these ones that are checked, if I look at this particular assignment I put in as the admin and I go down here and say, for example, I go down to the proposal schedule, it'll click and it'll show you that it's in the proposal schedule. If I hadn't checked that, it would be blank. And these are for the dates of the actual appointment. So if I move to a different date by going forward a date or back a date, you would see it would disappear. Or I can go to the current date. In this case, I can go say like to the 16th or I can just jump right over here and say, for example, I want something on the 27th. I can look at it that way. And like I said, if this actually expired, it should pop over here in red showing that this appointment was missed or for some reason was not edited to be in a new date or a new time if it had to be edited. And while we're speaking of editing and moving things, the project manager should be the one to do this, because if you're going to change things that are critical in the scheduling, that's who should be changing. And like we said before, you can always go in and look at editing and look at referral to where the employee was supposed to be working and on the schedule and doing the task. And if that's the case, it should be project managers that reschedule that kind of things. So be sure that that's the way it's done in order to keep it organized. And like we said, we can go to the year, the month, or the week in order to see all the things that are occurring, and this should be down in here and make it pretty easy to see what's going on, plus the individual dates, and this is a scrollable. Okay, that's pretty well worn out everything I can show you, except for the last thing where you can come up here, and if you had an event and you wanted to see that event, and you wanted to see it on the day calendar or whatever, you can put the item in here as far as search, and insert the input string and then go ahead and click on it to show all of that thing that relates to that, and it would take you to those. And it would have to be in the calendar that you're viewing, or say for example like you're an admin, it would show more. If you're one of the employees, it's only going to show or search for the items that are on your calendar because you logged in under that calendar. Okay, if you have any questions, need any support or whatever, let's do what we always do. Go to ontargetsolutions.biz and start a chat or send an email to us. Thank you.